The predynastic period, 4650–3050 said, there is evidence that the Egyptians began believing in a life after death early in their prehistory. A family member was buried with everyday objects such as pots, pellets for grinding cosmetics, beads, amulets, and combs, for use in the afterlife. The body was placed in its grave in a crouched or fetal position, with the head normally pointed south and the face turned west to see the setting sun. The Egyptians of the early predynastic period did not use artificial means to preserve the body for the afterlife, but it was preserved just the same. The deceased, wrapped only in a goat hide, was buried in a shallow oval pit dug out of the desert sand. Over time, the heat of the surrounding sand dried out the body. If a body is dried thoroughly, bacteria and fungi cannot eat at the tissues after death, and the body does not decay. Thus, the earliest Egyptian mummies were created by natural heat. Two things helped the Egyptians to notice that this natural process was occurring. First, the shifting sands of the desert made the marking of graves very difficult, so old graves would be accidentally disturbed when new graves were dug. Second, grave robbing became a profitable profession soon after the Egyptians began filling graves with valuable objects, and exposing the graves made clear the effect the sand was having on the bodies. Developments in later tombs of this period, though, kept the sand from touching the body. Sometimes the deceased was placed on a mat made of twigs and covered by a twig box. When the Egyptians began specializing in woodworking, wooden coffins also were used. The large tombs of the wealthy were kept as open chambers, often lined with sun-dried mud brick and covered with a plank roof. By now, the Egyptians considered the tomb to be the eternal dwelling place of the dead, a construction designed to provide extra comfort and protection for the deceased. Ironically, by changing the tomb design to accommodate this belief, the Egyptians had created conditions that led to the total decay of the body. The early dynastic period and Old Kingdom, 3050–181 said, because a well-preserved body was necessary for life after death, the Egyptians began trying to find an artificial way of preserving the dead. While excavating the Dynasty I tomb of Kinjur in 1899, British archaeologist Flinders Petrie discovered the earliest known attempt at preservation. In the brick wall of the tomb, Petrie found the lower part of an arm that had been wrapped in many layers of bandages. Though a beginning, this wrapping process alone had not stopped the body from decaying. Until a workable method of embalming bodies was discovered, the emphasis turned to creating a permanent covering that looked like the deceased, even though the body inside had decayed. The Egyptians believed that items that looked like the deceased could serve as substitutes in case the body was lost or destroyed. The answer was to take linen cloth soaked in resin or covered with plaster and mold it around the body. As the resin or plaster dried, it hardened into the molded shape. Special care was taken in the molding of the face, so it would be easily recognizable. This part of the molding could also be painted to heighten the lifelike appearance. In Dynasty IV, 2613–2498 said, developments toward true embalming began. For the first time, some of the corpse's internal organs were removed through an incision in the abdomen, a process that helped to slow the decaying of the body. The removed organs were saved and wrapped in resin-soaked linen. Sometimes they were placed in containers, sometimes they were placed in special areas in the tomb walls. The process of wrapping the body in molded linen continued, because only removing the internal organs did not preserve the corpse for long. The body was now wrapped in a fully extended position instead of the former crouched position. It is believed the position was changed, because it was easier to remove the internal organs through the abdomen, while the body was fully extended. The first evidence of the use of matron to dry out the body, as the sand had done, also comes from a dynasty tomb. The organs of Queen Hetepheres were found in a container of matron solution. Hetepheres was the mother of Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid. The first intermediate period, Middle Kingdom, and second intermediate period, 2181-1570 set. Further developments in mummification were made during this period. In a mass burial of Dynasty 11, 2160-2040 set, princesses, we see the first use of large amounts of dry matron packed around the bodies to remove all the water. The viscera of these princesses were also removed to slow the process of decay, but not through a normal incision. They were removed by injecting an enema of oleoresin, a substance like turpentine, to dissolve the organs, which then could flow out of the body. Because they could fall off and become lost during the matron drying process, fingernails and toenails were now tied on with thread. It was essential that all parts of the body be taken into the tomb so that the whole person could exist in the afterlife. More internal organs were being removed from the body than in the previous period. The heart was not removed, though, for it was believed that the deceased would need it later. Once emptied, the body cavity was stuffed with linen or linen and sawdust soaked in resin. This helped the mummy keep its shape. During the Middle Kingdom, close-fitting masks made of cartonnage were created to cover the mummy's head and shoulders. The mummy's face and wig were represented on the mask to make it easily recognizable. L.